Most Fords die because owners ignore the small things that slowly wear the whole truck down until one repair turns into three. So in this video, I'm going to show you what you need to do if you want your Ford to last 500,000 miles. And the last one is the one I see most often with my clients. So let's begin. Number 1. Keep the radiator and condenser clean. A lot of Ford owners obsess over oil and never look at the front of the truck, which is crazy when you think about how much heat the whole vehicle is trying to get rid of through that area. If the radiator and condenser are packed with bugs, dirt, cottonwood, sand, or road grime, airflow drops, and the truck starts working hotter than it should. It may never hit the point where the gauge scares you, but that does not mean it is healthy. Ford's own owner materials tell you to remove dirt and foreign material from the grille and radiator area, and not to spray water directly at the radiator from the front, which tells you they know debris buildup matters. This is one of those habits that separates trucks that age well from trucks that slowly cook themselves for years. Heat wears everything out faster. Hoses harden sooner, plastic gets brittle sooner, fan systems work harder, transmission temps creep up when the whole cooling stack is struggling, and AC performance usually gets worse long before the owner connects the dots. On an F-150, Explorer, Expedition, or anything that sees highway miles, towing, summer traffic, dusty roads, or bugs every night, this adds up. The fix is not complicated or expensive. Pull the loose debris out carefully, wash the area properly, and stop letting the cooling stack turn into a dirt filter. I have seen owners spend real money chasing "it just runs hotter than it used to" complaints when the front end was clogged with months of filth. That is lazy ownership, and it shortens the life of a good Ford for no reason. Number 2. Check and clean the main ground connections. Some of the weirdest Ford problems you will ever see are not dramatic mechanical failures. They are bad grounds. The truck starts acting possessed, random electrical behavior shows up, modules start doing strange things, cranking gets weak, lights act funny, and owners start throwing parts at it because they think something major is failing. Then you clean and tighten the main grounds and half the nonsense disappears. Ford truck owners constantly run into this because corroded or loose grounds create low-voltage problems that make a healthy vehicle feel broken. This matters even more on trucks that are not new anymore. Moisture, battery acid vapor, road salt, age, and prior bad work all take their toll. You see it on F-150s, Explorers, Expeditions, older Super Duties, all of it. One dirty main ground or weak cable connection can send an owner down a stupidly expensive rabbit hole. They start pricing alternators, batteries, modules, starters, or sensors when the real problem is a connection that should have been bright, tight, and protected. Ford owners also note on aluminum body F-150s that grounding in the wrong place can promote corrosion between the steel frame and aluminum body, which is exactly why clean, correct grounds matter. This is cheap prevention. Pull the main grounds, inspect them, clean them, tighten them, and stop letting electrical issues build around something basic. A lot of Ford problems are really neglect problems wearing a Ford badge. Ground connections are one of the clearest examples of that. Number 3. Change the differential fluid before it starts making noise. Rear ends do not usually fail because they were cursed. They fail because nobody touched the fluid until the axle started singing, whining, or howling, and by then the cheap stage was gone. Ford owners ignore differential fluid all the time because the truck keeps moving and there is no dramatic warning light begging them to care. That is exactly why this one belongs high on the list if you want a Ford to live a very long time. On trucks especially, this matters more than people admit. An F-150 that tows, hauls, runs oversized tires, or spends years doing normal truck stuff is working that differential whether the owner thinks about it or not. And once the fluid gets old, contaminated, or heat cycled long enough, you are no longer talking about ideal lubrication inside a component that costs real money to rebuild. Ford's towing and spec materials constantly come back to rear axle ratings, locking differentials, and payload and trailer loads, which tells you one thing clearly: that axle is doing serious work. What makes this so frustrating is how avoidable it is. A fluid service costs a lot less than gear noise, bearing wear, or an owner trying to pretend the howl from the rear is just truck noise. I have seen people spend thousands modifying a truck and then balk at servicing one of the parts that actually determines whether the thing stays alive. That is backwards. If you want a Ford to go 500,000 miles without major repairs, you stop treating the differential like a sealed mystery box and start treating it like the hardworking drivetrain component it is. Number 4. Use OEM quality sensors instead of cheap aftermarket ones. A lot of Fords get turned into problem children because somebody tried to save money on the wrong sensor. The owner thinks they are being smart, buys the cheapest part they can find online, clears the code, and then the truck comes back with the same complaint, or 3 new ones. That is how a perfectly good F-150, Explorer, or Escape starts getting a reputation for being electrical when the real problem is cheap parts feeding bad information into the system. This matters because modern Fords run on data. Fuel pressure, coolant temperature, airflow, throttle position, all of it. If one sensor is off, the whole vehicle can start making bad decisions. Ford's own parts site pushes genuine OEM and Motorcraft parts for exactly that reason, and Motorcraft sensor listings keep repeating the same point. They are built to Ford OE specs and designed to send accurate signals to the onboard computer. That is not marketing fluff. That is the difference between a fix and a comeback. And there is a money angle owners keep getting wrong. A bargain sensor might save you $30 to $80 once. Then you waste another afternoon installing it, maybe another diagnostic charge, maybe another tow or another parts cannon. Guess when the truck still runs badly. I have seen people spend $200 to $400 solving the consequences of a cheap sensor decision that should have been done right the first time. If the goal is 500,000 miles without major repairs, you stop gambling with junk electronics and start giving the engine clean, trustworthy information. That is how good Fords stay good. Number 5. Make sure both cooling fans are working properly. A Ford can run hotter than it should for a long time before the owner realizes anything is wrong. That is why cooling fan problems cost people money. They wait for a dramatic overheat that never comes, while the truck spends months getting cooked in traffic, idling with the AC on, or crawling through summer heat with one fan lazy, weak, or completely dead. Ford's own owner information explains that cooling fan operation after shutdown is normal because the system is trying to reduce coolant temperature and protect the engine. That tells you how important the fans are in the first place. If the truck relies on them when parked hot, imagine how much they matter sitting in city traffic with the AC loaded and no real airflow through the front. On top of that, Ford has had actual customer programs tied to high-speed cooling fan relay issues, which tells you this is not some imaginary weak point owners invented. The owners who catch this early are the ones who notice the little signs. AC that is colder once you start moving. Temp behavior that looks fine on the highway but worse in traffic. Fans that should be roaring and are suspiciously quiet. Those clues matter. Ignore them long enough and the heat starts working on everything around it. Coolant hoses, plastic fittings, transmission temps, engine seals. That is how a small fan issue becomes a bigger aging problem across the whole vehicle. And this is not a ridiculous check. You can listen, observe behavior, and catch it before the repair bill becomes stupid. That is the whole point. You're not waiting for the truck to beg for help. You are making sure one of the most important support systems in the vehicle is actually doing its job. Number 6. Track down small noises before they turn into expensive repairs. One of the worst habits Ford owners have is calling every strange sound normal. That is how good trucks age badly. A chirp becomes a belt job that was ignored. A light clunk becomes a mount that collapses. A faint whine becomes a differential problem the owner spent 6 months pretending not to hear. Nobody wins that game. Ford itself treats abnormal noise seriously enough that its certified inspection checklists specifically call for engine noise normal, transmission noise normal, and drive axle or transfer case noise normal on the road test. That tells you something important right away. Sound is not background decoration. It is one of the clearest early warning systems the vehicle has. The money difference between early and late here is huge. A belt chirp might mean dealing with a $40 to $100 belt or tensioner before it leaves you stranded. A mount starting to knock might be a manageable job before it starts shaking the whole drivetrain around. A faint rear-end hum can sometimes be caught at the fluid or bearing stage before you are looking at serious axle work. Owners lose thousands by normalizing sounds that should have triggered action much earlier. And that is where experience matters. Vehicles that reach 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 miles usually have owners who listen. They do not wait for the noise to become dramatic enough for YouTube. They catch it when it is still cheap, still isolated, and still honest. The fastest way to shorten the life of a good Ford is to keep telling yourself, they all do that, when yours clearly did not do it 6 months ago. Number 7. Replace worn engine and transmission mounts before they collapse. One of the easiest ways to make a good Ford feel old before its time is to leave bad mounts in it too long. Most owners wait until the vibration gets embarrassing, the clunk on takeoff gets obvious, or the whole truck starts feeling rougher than it used to. By that point, the mounts are not just a little tired. They are already letting the drivetrain move around more than it should. That movement is what people underestimate. A weak engine or transmission mount does not only make the cabin feel worse, it adds stress to hoses, wiring, exhaust connections, intake tubes, and everything else tied to an engine that is supposed to stay controlled under load. In an F-150, Explorer, Escape, or Edge, you start noticing it in different ways. A shudder dropping into gear, a heavier thump when you get back on throttle, extra vibration at idle with the AC on. Sometimes owners think the transmission is getting worse when the truck is really just slamming against worn mounts. This is exactly the kind of repair that is cheaper early. A mount job is annoying, but still manageable. Keep driving it until one mount is completely gone, and now you are chasing side effects too. I have seen owners price out what they thought was a bigger drivetrain problem when the first smart move should have been replacing mounts that had been dead for months. If the goal is 500,000 miles, the truck needs to stay tight, not just running. Bad mounts make everything around them age faster. That is why I would rather replace them a little early than keep pretending a vibrating Ford is just getting old. Number 8. Replace the serpentine belt and tensioner before they fail. A lot of owners treat the serpentine belt like it only matters the moment it snaps. That is a bad way to look at it. By the time the belt actually fails, the truck has usually been giving warnings for a while. Noise on startup, chirping under load, a tensioner that is not holding properly anymore, tiny cracks, glazing, movement that just does not look right. The problem is people wait because the truck still drives. That is how simple maintenance turns into a roadside problem. On a Ford truck or SUV, that belt is driving things you do not want to lose suddenly. Depending on the setup, once the belt goes, you can lose charging, power steering assist, water pump drive, and the whole day goes sideways fast. And sometimes the belt is not even the real villain. It is the tensioner getting weak, letting the belt slip, flutter, and wear out faster while the owner keeps blaming a little noise. The reason I rate this so highly for long life is that it is predictable. This is not one of those mystery failures that comes out of nowhere. You usually get clues, and the parts are not crazy expensive compared with what happens when you ignore them. A decent belt and tensioner job is a lot cheaper than a tow truck, an overheated engine, or being stranded because you pushed a worn drive system too far. A Ford that lasts 500,000 miles is usually owned by somebody who replaces failure points before they become events. The belt and tensioner are one of the clearest examples of that. Waiting for the dramatic version is how owners make a small repair feel expensive. Number 9. Replace old vacuum lines and brittle hoses before they crack. This is one of those aging problems that makes a Ford feel weird in ways owners struggle to describe. The truck still starts, it still drives. But now idle is slightly off. Response feels inconsistent. Fuel trims start drifting. Maybe there is a faint whistle somewhere. Maybe one day a check engine light joins the party, and none of it feels dramatic enough for the owner to take seriously. Old hoses and vacuum lines are perfect at creating that kind of slow, annoying decline. Heat is what kills them. Years of engine bay temperature cycles harden rubber and plastic until they stop behaving like hoses and start behaving like dry old sticks. Then one small crack, one weak elbow, one loose connection, and now the engine is dealing with unmetered air, vacuum leaks, or pressure issues that make the whole vehicle feel rougher than it should. On older F-150S, Explorers, Escapes, and plenty of EcoBoost Fords, this is the kind of thing that starts tiny and then wastes a lot of time because people chase the symptom instead of the cause. What makes this worth doing early is how cheap the materials usually are compared with the nonsense they can create. A small hose, a molded line, a brittle connector. None of that sounds important until it starts causing drivability complaints that send owners after sensors, coils, throttle bodies, or fuel parts they never needed. If you want a Ford to live a very long time, you do not let old rubber and plastic decide when the next problem starts. You inspect the hoses, replace the hard and cracked stuff, and keep the engine bay from turning into a collection of future vacuum leaks. That is not glamorous, but neither is spending money diagnosing a problem that was hanging there in plain sight the whole time. Number 10. Inspect heat-damaged plastic parts in the engine bay. Plenty of Ford owners will replace a battery, a sensor, even a belt, and still ignore the cheap plastic pieces sitting right next to the heat all year long. That is a mistake if you want the truck to live a very long time. Underhood plastic does not usually fail in a dramatic way first. It gets hard, brittle, slightly discolored, maybe starts weeping a little, maybe develops a hairline crack around a fitting, and then one day you are dealing with a coolant leak, a vacuum issue, or a connector that snaps in your hand. This shows up constantly on older F-150S, Explorers, Escapes, Edges, and really any Ford that has spent years seeing heat cycles. Coolant tees, small hose junctions, Degas bottlenecks, vacuum fittings, intake clips, electrical connector bodies, all that stuff gets cooked over time. Owners often look right past it because the truck still runs. Then the part fails in traffic, on a trip, or in summer heat when the engine bay is already hot enough to make everything worse. What makes this one valuable is how cheap prevention usually is. A tired plastic fitting or reservoir is a small bill compared with what happens when it fails and dumps coolant, creates a vacuum leak, or leaves the truck undrivable. I have seen people spend hours diagnosing rough running or intermittent coolant loss when the real issue was an old plastic piece that had aged out and should have been changed months earlier. A Ford that reaches huge mileage usually has an owner who replaces heat-damaged parts before they split. That is not overreacting. That is understanding that plastic ages whether the owner pays attention or not. Number 11. Stop overloading the truck week after week. Just because a Ford can move the weight does not mean it is happy doing it all the time. That is where a lot of owners fool themselves. The truck squats a little, still drives, still brakes, still gets home, so they tell themselves everything is fine. Then months or years later, they are staring at worn rear suspension, tired shocks, rougher transmission behavior, brakes that age too fast, and a truck that feels older than the mileage says it should. This matters most on F-150S, Rangers, Expeditions, and even Explorers that get treated like they are always on call for heavy work. One heavy load once in a while is not the issue. It is the repeated habit of using the truck right at the edge of what is comfortable, over and over again, because it can handle it. That weekly abuse adds up. Heat in the transmission, stress in the differential, rear tires wearing harder, axle and suspension components constantly dealing with more than normal. None of it sounds exciting, but all of it shortens the life of the vehicle. And the worst part is that owners often spend money reacting to the results instead of changing the habit that caused them. They buy suspension parts, complain about rear-end noise, or wonder why the truck does not feel tight anymore. When the answer is that they have been aging it faster with workload, it should not be carrying that often. If the goal is 500,000 miles, the truck has to survive long enough to get there. That means using the payload and towing capacity intelligently, not treating the number in the brochure like a weekly target. A Ford lasts longer when it spends most of its life working within itself, not proving a point every Saturday. Number 12. Keep the alignment correct so the whole chassis wears properly. Most people think alignment is just about saving tires. That is too shallow. Tires are only the obvious part. When a Ford runs around with bad alignment for months, the whole vehicle starts wearing in a dirtier, heavier way. Steering parts take more abuse, suspension works at worse angles, wheel bearings can live a harder life, and the truck never really rolls as cleanly as it should. That is exactly how a vehicle loses that tight, solid feel long before the engine is actually tired. You notice this a lot on trucks and SUVs because owners are constantly giving them reasons to go out of alignment. Potholes, curb hits, rough roads, towing, carrying weight, replacing tires without checking angles, even just running worn suspension too long. Then the owner gets used to the steering wheel sitting a little off-center or the truck drifting a bit, and because the change happened gradually, they stop taking it seriously. That is expensive laziness. A proper alignment is cheap compared with chewing through a set of tires early, replacing front-end parts sooner than necessary, or spending years driving a vehicle that is quietly fighting itself. I have seen owners drop serious money on tires and then refuse to spend the extra amount needed to make those tires wear properly. That makes no sense on a Ford you are trying to keep forever. A long-life truck usually feels honest on the road. It tracks straight, the wheel sits where it should, and the chassis is not scrubbing away money every mile. If you want 500,000 miles without major repairs, you do not just protect the engine. You make sure the entire vehicle is rolling the way it was supposed to roll.